Doctors, what is the worst homemade cure a patient used for their illness? An older woman with a big, gaping foot ulcer visited her family in Indonesia. Her sister took her to a spiritual healer, who instructed her to make an ointment and apply it to the ulcer. The ointment included herbs, sheep urine, olives, human hair. The day after applying the ointment, she was to cleanse the ulcer in the ocean. After a few weeks of this, the ulcer would heal. Obviously it did not heal, and a rare mycoplasma bacteria found only in the ocean grew in her wound, and she lost her foot. Nurse here. I used to work in a rural magnet hospital in the south. Had a patient who was there because he'd got an athlete's foot and decided to use an old mountain remedy. Soak your feet in vinegar, lemon juice, and boiling water to kill the fungus. In fairness, the original remedy probably called for merely hot water, but the guy went a little overboard with the temperature. He gave himself some nice bilateral third-degree burns on his feet, but there was no sign of any athlete's foot. So he had that going for him, which was nice. I knew someone who got cancer and decided to starve it instead of taking chemo. First results after the 40-day fast were promising, but not for long. He died in less than a year. The sad part is, the survival rate with chemo for this type of cancer is really high, and it was detected quite early. Paramedic once had a patient diagnosed with a cancerous growth on his ear. He took care of it himself with fingernail clippers. It got so infected by the time he called 911. We could see his jawbone through his cheek. I took my daughter to the DR for a recurring ear infection when she was about 4. The doctor took one look in her ear and asked me if I had seen her putting any foreign objects into her ears, and I said no. He then took some tweezers and pulled out a small piece of what turned out to be garlic. I told him I had no idea how it got there. He said it was definitely making her ear infections worse. Turns out that her dad and stepmom had heard that garlic oil can help cure infections, and they didn't have any. So instead of taking my daughter to the doctor like they should have, they literally just shoved a small clove of garlic in my daughter's ear and left it there. Not a doctor, but the son of one. There was a guy who would go in once a year or so for checkups. He had surgery on his foot and needed it looked at regularly. My dad was the surgeon, so anyways, one day guy comes in for his appointment. Says he isn't feeling well. Thinks he might have gotten the flu from his kids. No big deal. Unrelated illness happens. Right? Well, he was talking to my dad before he took his shoes off. He was beaming. Yeah. I fell pretty hard. Gashed my foot open. But I fixed it myself. Saved a trip to the hospital. Well, lo and behold, he has taken copper wire and sutured the gash shut. It had been a week and it was badly infected. That's where his flu-like symptoms came from. Had he waited a few more days, it would have killed him. Dad took those out, dressed it. The skin had degraded too far to sew up properly, prescribed him antibiotics and referred him to the hospital for observation. He ended up spending $3,000 on his care instead of the $200 or so for stitches in the first place. Nurse here. Had the fortunate luck to be privy to a patient's super duper secret way of getting rid of leg cramps at night. Get a cork. Not just any cork though. It must be from a bottle of red wine. And tuck it in between your toes at night. He was very sure that was the cure that Big Pharma wasn't telling us. Completely irrelevant that he started taking a magnesium supplement at the same time as his newfound super cure of toe cork fondling. So Big Pharma, if you're reading this, we all know now. My best friend growing up rubbed CBD oil on her stomach after she was diagnosed with uterine cancer to try to cure it. It isn't very aggressive, so it hasn't spread that much. But she's convinced she's cured. I feel bad for her daughter. This isn't from something I've seen clinically. But if you look it up, there's news articles about FB groups of parents who encourage each other to do horrible bleach enemas, or to make their kids swallow caustic chemicals, to cure autism. And then when the kids get agitated and shed their intestinal lining, they consider it a sign that it's working. This is literal child abuse. Not a doctor, but a pharmacist who works in an ER. I had a woman come in for chest pain, and when I was interviewing her for her medication history, she was telling me how bad the pain was that she took everything in her medicine cabinet. I asked her to list what she has in her medicine cabinet / what she took. The list went: Tylenol, acetaminophen, 2 tablets, Advil, ibuprofen, 2 tablets, aspirin 2 tablets, heroin 1 to 2 points, Gravol. At which point I kind of had to go. Hold up, you used how many points of what? And the patient very matter-of-factly stated that she came in because the heroin didn't help with the pain at all. Which in some ways I guess was a pretty reasonable course of action, since she came in since the heroin didn't work. Not a doctor, but my vet friend once had a client rub butter all over her cat in hopes that the cat would lick it off because the cat had stopped eating. Work in medical field. Yogurt up their vag for yeast infection. Had a patient who couldn't sleep because she had gotten bug bites on her legs, keeping her awake. Her cure? She poured boiling water on them. Gave herself 3rd-degree burns to treat her bug bites. Dermatologist here. Dude was trying to get rid of his papulopustulosis acne with a homemade mask, which consisted of a mix of betamethasone ointment, honey, cream cheese, yogurt, banana, and makeup and cream for color. So many bad things here, and the dude developed a nodular cystic acne after 3 or so applications, which he did daily because, of course. Who suggested this abomination? Various YouTube videos and his own initiative of mixing everything in a bowl to cure faster. My patient came in complaining that her skin turned blue after ruling out that she was a Smith. I asked her if she'd been using any alternative products. Turns out she had been ingesting colloidal silver with a belief that it would prevent infections. Getting drunk to cure a cold. Essential oil. Even non-doctors know this very well. Not a doctor. I work at a grocery store deli. One lady, who is a regular, is convinced that magnets cure body ailments. She has magnets in her car, and occasionally she'll make a big show of being unable to breathe. She is fine, and don't call the ambulance. She will walk all the way outside to her car. Bring the chintzy fridge magnets back inside to our back corner. Then by rubbing the magnets on her chest through all of layers of clothes, she is cured and doesn't need the paramedics or medical help. And don't get her started on how oranges and vitamins are the cure for autism. Really? Don't? I will slap your hand so hard. Other side of the patient. I was on a business trip when my tooth implant fell. I had still a full day on a strange city. Next week, I proudly went to my dentist, feeling better than MacGyver, bragging how smart I am. So, I needed something pliable, harmless enough, and that would hold the tooth for a couple of hours. You will NEV. You used bubble gum. What? How can you possibly know? You are far from being the first who thought about that. And will not be the last. Either. Clue for my bubble burst. Without chewing gum. Well, there was a man who injected himself with his own semen to cure his back pain. I guess it was working for him. Right up until his arm got infected. A lady thought she could cure her cancer with essential oils. It didn't work. She ended up in the ER weeks later. I did clerical work for a naturopathic physician. We had a number of folks treating arthritis with gin-soaked golden raisins. 9 a day, no more. No less. Not coming in cause they can't afford it. My aunt has this concoction of basically just rubbing alcohol and marijuana leaves, seeds and stems, and for whatever crazy reason she thinks that if you rub it over an ache that it will magically make it go away. LOL, she calls it the brujeria. A potato for a prolapsed uterus. It is an old wives' tale. But she followed through with it. It had roots and everything. Not a doctor, yet, but work in EMS. The number of folks who think WD-40 will help arthritis pain is abnormally high. Also, though this is not explicitly a home remedy, but the people who think things will just cure themselves with time. Yes, this works sometimes. Yes, healthcare is financially prohibitive. But if something has been debilitating you for more than 72 hours, it probably won't be going away anytime soon. Just go get it checked. It's cheaper to treat something over time than to go, "Oh, I suddenly need $500K for this procedure or I'm gonna die." Rural nurse here. Had a patient soak his finger in kerosene in order to make it grow back. Many of these responses are funny. But it's sad knowing that people resort to these things because healthcare is so freaking expensive. Like, goddammit, I hate the world. Heat lamp therapy on a very young woman who had a very high chance of her breast cancer being cured from chemo. She traveled to Mexico and paid for it. We lived in Canada, so it would have been free for her, but she waited too long with alternative therapy and ended up dying. Here's a twist to the question. I actually have a home remedy that worked better than what the ER gave me. I was working as a lifeguard at a Boy Scout camp. The swimming pier was made of creosote-soaked telephone poles and then whatever lumber on top. I had been setting up the swim area or something and got some of the creosote on my face. That stuff reacts horribly in the sun. It started cooking my skin really bad. I ended up at the ER and they gave me some cream that didn't do anything. I made it back to the camp and the camp ranger took a look at me. He was some old redneck who had been there and done that. He was retired military, I think, but pretty much seemed to know everything about everything. He took one look at my face and told me to make a paste out of baking soda and water and put it on before I went to bed. It worked. The burning stopped. Just now upon a Google search I read that creosote is acidic and so it makes sense that baking soda would neutralize it. I don't know how this guy knew that. Glad he did though. Side story. We also kept a homemade solution around made of 1/3 water, 1/3 rubbing alcohol, and 1/3 white vinegar. We used it to clear water out of swimmers' ears to keep them from getting infected. It worked well. Dentist here. I know a guy who lost a tooth. Got the tooth, put some home building cement on the root, put it back in the alveoli and showed up a week later with a massive infection. He lost a tooth, 2 neighboring teeth and some part of his jawbone. Patient of mine used daily Head and Shoulders shampoo enemas through a rubber tube to keep himself regular. He came in because he popped a hole in the wall of his rectum doing it. WD-40 for arthritis on knees and elbows. Thought it was a joke at first. Said it helps with his joint pain LMAO. Don't ask why an 80-year-old lady would feel the need to tell her optometrist that LOL. I'm a paramedic and my partner told me the worst he has ever seen was for a burn patient. He said that he saw a teenager hobbling towards him covered in a bunch of white gooey gunk. So apparently homeboy was out in the country trying to start a big bonfire and he first decided to douse his big bundle with some gasoline before tossing a match in. Well, it caught real fast and he got a big OL flashed burn across his whole body. His mom apparently used to be a certified nurse and covered him in mayonnaise because that would help treat the burn. Nah. All she did was introduce a ductin of infection into his body and make it much more excruciating for him when my partner had to wipe it off of him and place burn bandages on him while they transported him to the hospital. I heard this from a pod. Guy couldn't or wouldn't pay for blood thinner, so he took rat poison.